My name is Jean-David Rochet. I'm a professor at the University of Geneva in the departments of molecular biology and plant biology. And today it's my great privilege to interview Pierre Joliot, who has been a key figure in the field of photosynthesis during the last 50, 60 years. Pierre Joliot has been professor at the Collège de France. He has received a large number of distinctions, and I'm really looking forward to interview him today. So let's start with the beginning. And of course, one question which arises spontaneously is the rich scientific past of your family. I mean, your grandfather, Pierre Curie, and your grandmother, Marie Curie, won the Nobel Prize in physics and chemistry. I think actually 3 prizes for 2 persons. And then your parents, Frédéric Joliot and Irène Joliot-Curie, also won the Nobel Prize. So of course the question is, as a youngster, as a young scientist, did you feel any responsibility, any pressure? Were you intimidated? How did you actually live this period?
I have the great luck that I have never any pressure from my parents. For instance, I was a quite poor student in school, and I have practically no pressure and no remarks on my parents, while my sister was the first everywhere, even in sport. I was always below the average, and my parents don't take too much care of this situation. In other terms, I have never pressure on me, but what was important is that I have, through my parents and directly through my great parents, a certain image of research. What I learned is that research was closer to an artistic job, and I learned also that what was more important in research is to take pleasure to do it. It was a game, it was an adventure, and if I was not able to play when I do research, I will be not a good researcher.
How did you choose actually to work on photosynthesis? Because your parents were physicists, your sister, I understand, is also a physicist. And how did you choose to work on a biological problem?
One of the reasons, and probably my father is something in this choice. My father was at the origin of the development of heavy physics in France. And he was a very good scientist and also a very good manager. But he discovered at the end of his life that in fact the science he liked to do was something much closer to his hand, with shorter delay, possibility of imagination, possibility to do error. When science becomes too expensive, to make error is very difficult. To be creative, you need to be able to make error. And tell me that perhaps it would be better that, knowing my type of mind, I think that it was probably better that I work in a more light science, if I can say. And I think he was perfectly right. The interesting thing, it takes a feeling of this type, I think, quite late in his life. He discovered, when the great discovery he did with my mother was made on a table. It was pure physics, but the table, it was a few hours experiment. And now, in modern physics, especially in high energy physics, it's a billion of dollars, it's years and years, And you have not this very rapid interaction between your idea, the possibility to test an experiment, and this is the real play. And for this reason, I think I was rather pushed toward biology. Now to other, more precisely, why photosynthesis, my feeling is I am convinced that I would be interested in any type of science. More important than the type of science I choose was the quality of the boss I have when I start to work. It was Professor René Wurmser, who have the same conception of science than me, and who leave me totally free.
You were born in Paris, you studied in Paris, you did your PhD in Paris. I mean, you have worked most of your life in Paris. So and actually in this building, right?
I start in this building in 53, which means
almost 60 years ago.
Yeah. In 2 years, it will be 60 years that I am in this place.
Yeah. But you told me you just did one postdoc in Bessel Koch's lab.
Yes.
That was only 8 months or something like
yes.
that. Which is also unusual because today
your question is a question of mobility of researcher. At least in my field and with researchers of my generation, I see in the States, for instance, that most of scientists were very mobile, displaced in radiation, but very stable in terms of the subject they follow. Personally, my choice was to be a little more mobile in terms of the subject, my subject of interest, and perhaps more stable in terms of my geographic localization.
Yes, but what I find remarkable is that you did essentially all these changes, you did them on yourself. Usually when people change field, they go to the lab which is strongest in this particular field to get acquainted with the field. But you did essentially everything by yourself. I would like to come back to this early period where you did this major work on oxygen evolution. I think you were the first to show this four oscillations, which eventually then gave rise to the cycle by Bessel Koch. And there's one thing which I find quite remarkable in your career, and that is you always developed new technology, new instruments to solve specific biological questions. And I think at the time you developed this novel technique to measure oxygen, which was very sensitive.
There is two important points in what you said. The first is that what I think is characteristic of my approach is a mix between technical effort to develop new technique. I do it for oxygen, I do it for spectroscopy, for fluorescence. And I like very much to develop new techniques. But I never develop a technique just to make a beautiful apparatus, but because I have a specific problem to solve. What I like very much in this, if you can say, double career, technical and fundamental science, is that in fundamental science, my idea is that you never know what you can find. You have to be very erratic, to go in all directions, to accept error, to stop a program, to go, to have a very disorder in the way, great disorder, the way to work. When you develop a technique, it's the opposite. You have a precise idea of what you want. And for me, to shift from the one activity to the other was a way to stabilize myself. Because when you do really fundamental research as an artistic job, you have a lot of unsuccess, disappointment. At this time, it was possible to go back for me to something much more continuous, much more well organized, which was development of technique.
What I find quite remarkable is that you were quite generous in the sense that you provided your competitor, Bessel Koch, with this technology, and eventually you were actually beaten at the end, right? And today this would be almost unbelievable that something like this would happen, that you provide your competitor with the instrumentation which will eventually allow you to go forward.
Bessel Koch played a very important role in my career. And when I work in his lab, what I find really extraordinary in this guy was he spent a lot of time to read papers coming from totally unknown people. Is why he read my paper. And his idea was always, perhaps there is something original and new in this. And he spent a lot of time. And for somebody who was so efficient and so he discovered P700, he make a lot of great discovery. I think that the time he spent, I said honestly, I never have the courage to do the same. I think the time he spent to search if some young guy somewhere in the world was not doing something important that everybody ignore was really for me an example. And really, if I have the opportunity to introduce myself in the international scientific community, is entirely due to Bessel Koch. Nevertheless, I learned to Bessel Koch the new technique I have developed. And after having worked with Bessel Koch, we were in competition, but always a competition, a perfectly fair competition. I was the first, I think, to make a quite significant discovery on the problem of oxygen formation in photosynthesis. And finally, the last word, it was Bessel Koch that get the correct answer. And I was a little disappointed that it was not me. But on the other hand, I said, the way that Bessel Koch behaved with me was so important in my scientific development that I think that perhaps it does not make such a bad investment being fair with me. And I think that it was a great advantage, personal advantage for him and for me. What I learned in research was that I do research for fun. Now you do research to win. And I am convinced that in an artistic job, it's not the good way. You know, if a painter or a musician want just to be better than the other one, it's not the way to be really good. He has to be good, which is something completely different. The modern world concentrates too much on the idea that what is important is not what you are really, but if you are better than another one. This leads to competition on the same subject. You have some fashionable subject in which you have a lot, on which we have a lot of laboratory working in competition, and I think it's the worst way to use the money for research, because what is important? Is it so important to know if I beat you from 1 week for a discovery? It's good for my ego or good for your ego, but for the discovery, the discovery will be here. If I discover something new, even not perhaps less important, but that is really new, and I am the only one to find it, I think it's more important. And is the way I think that science could be more efficient.
Yes. In this respect, I wish to come back to a book you wrote a few years ago, which is called Research Passionately. And you can read some. I read some extra some parts, and I just would like to read one part of which I particularly liked, and I'll tell it in French. You wrote, une ambition intellectuelle excessive paralyse beaucoup de jeunes chercheurs qui se fixent comme but ultime la ou les découvertes majeures. Ils sont alors condamnés à un sentiment permanent de frustration qui peut les conduire à la stérilité. And I think this is a lesson which I think people should, young people should
Yes,
think about, because
I always said what I want to say that for most of young people and most of people, discovery is the major progress, you know. It's Einstein. The probability that I could be Einstein is really negligible. And the probability that I can find something new, perhaps certainly much less important than
Yes.
the theory of relativity,
yes,
is quite high. In other terms, if you consider the discovery, you judge the importance of the discovery by the impact on the society, it's more and more difficult to make this type of discovery, and as I said, it's a great frustration if you don't do it.
Yes.
And personally, I always said that I make hundreds of discovery. Nobody probably never heard of my discovery, but I know that in a certain way it's a discovery. And this gives me the pleasure in my research, you know.
there's another part I'd like to read, and where you made a very beautiful comparison between science and art. And you wrote, comme dans toute forme d'art, la peinture par exemple, il existe un continuum entre l'œuvre d'un Rembrandt et celle également respectable d'un peintre du dimanche. La beauté de notre métier réside dans le fait que les progrès de la science ne reposent pas exclusivement sur les découvertes de quelques rares génies, mais également sur l'activité créatrice plus modeste pratiquée au quotidien de nombreux chercheurs. And a bit further, you add, in a very modest way, je crois avoir été un chercheur créatif, bien qu'aucune de mes contributions n'ait apporté de révolution majeure dans la biologie. I think it's a very nice. Very
It's
nice part
certainly
of,
the way that I conceive research, and I fear that the way, for instance, that young scientists are now evaluated, especially what I call the quantitative evaluation, does not push young people to this type of discovery that is possible. I don't say for all researchers, for many of them. Many of them have, from my point of view, are either too ambitious or have not enough ambition, you know. You have to have the ambition which is quite close to what you can really realize. And if you are extremely good, and if you are a genius, you will know it. You have not to fight to be it. And you can be useful, and I think I have been useful in research, even if you are not a genius.
yeah. Now, okay, talking about quantitative evaluation today, now I'd like to talk about more quantitative biology, because one thing which strikes me when I read your papers, you're always very quantitative. That is, you say, you know, we have X photons which are absorbed by photosystem 1, photosystem 2. You have this complex which turns over so and so many times per second. Everything is really quantitative, and you know, you did this already 20, 30 years ago, and you know, at the time biology was sort of more qualitative, and yeah, this is, I find this rather striking. You are extremely you always quantitate things. Another aspect which I think is important in your scientific career, I mean, not only were you an exceptional researcher, but you also somehow managed to get together a group of very talented people, and which finally, and today we have, you know, this photosynthesis laboratory, which is now first-class lab in the world. And I think the strength from your part was to recognize that in order to fully understand the functioning and the regulation of the photosynthetic machinery, you have to take a multidisciplinary approach. And you somehow manage to attract very creative persons. And the first name, of course, who comes to my mind is Pierre Benoun, whom I had the pleasure to collaborate with for many years, who is an incredibly creative person. And then you hired Francis-Henri Bollmann, who took over the direction of the lab and obviously has been very successful. So what was your what was your trick to attract these people?
My trick is, curiously, that I am very self-concentrated on my own subject. But I know that my subject of work is a very, very small part of biology and even a very small part in photosynthesis study. In other terms, even if I am personally totally concentrated on my own work, I have always a feeling that I need to have just the same idea, to have people who have different subjects, who think in a completely different way than me, and to leave them have their life as they want to do.
I think it's a vision. I think it's a vision of what biology will be, because that was 20, 30 years ago when you started this, and at the time it was not that obvious. I mean, especially from at the time photosynthesis was mostly biophysical. There was very little genetics, or molecular biology was barely existing, and to have this long-term vision, I think is quite remarkable.
Don't forget that this institute is Institut de Biologie Physico-Chimique. It was created by Jean Perrin in the year 1930. And at this time, you have totally the idea that multidisciplinarity was a necessity. And at this time, it was not really, it was completely out of the view of science and this has always been the basic idea of this institute. Now, it's quite common to have Institut de Biologie Physico-Chimique, but I can tell you that 70 or 80 years ago, it was not at all something obvious. And Jean Perrin, who created this institute, had also the idea that he should leave to young scientists the maximum degree of freedom. It was the case in the institute. He was not the big head of the institute telling to everybody what they have to do. All these people who are completely free, physicists, chemists, and biologists, to do what they want. And on this basis, Jean Perrin created the CNRS, Centre National de la Recherche Scientifique. And in a conference, when he created the CNRS, he said that the Institut de Biologie Physico-Chimique was the pilot of CNRS, because it was the first place where this type of organization of science in France was realized, with not completely concentrated below a few very powerful guys who decide from everything. He wants to give a freedom to young scientists.
Yes, I think this is something very, very important what you're saying here. I think CNRS has really been unique in this respect because, again, coming back to the example of Pierre Benoun, an unusually creative person. I think a person like this would probably have been crashed in the American system.
I think so.
Whereas he could blossom in the CNRS system because of this freedom. And
when Pierre Benoun arrived in my lab, he has what I consider as very clever but quite crazy project, and I can offer to him to work with me on my subject, telling to him, I leave you completely free to try to develop genetic in my laboratory. At this time, I am always, but my laboratory was a pure laboratory of biophysics, and genetics was completely out of my mind. This guy presents to me a project which seems to me interesting, and I can take in the CNRS lab the possibility to accept him. And it was the same with all the excellent scientists as Bose Dainer, Francis André Vollmann, who come in my lab, to leave them out of my direct control, because we have this very large degree of freedom. And I think it's one aspect of CNRS that I think we have to fight very strong, because CNRS is often very criticized from outside, and I think that this aspect is really something we have to keep.
Now, another aspect which I think is interesting in your career is you have held a large number of different jobs, right? You're a researcher, lab director, but you're also involved in politics, right? And you're scientific advisor of the during the Mitterrand area.
Yes.
And I think I can remember I once visited IBPC many years ago, and you told me that you were on guard a weekend, and you actually had the responsibility to handle any major political crisis. Even when you had all these responsibilities, I still saw you doing experiments. How did you manage to do so many things at the same time? Because
I am convinced that it's impossible to be a good director, to be the number of what you have to do is much higher than what you can do. In other terms, you have to make choice. And my feeling is that even the time I spend to science when I have responsibility makes that at the least I keep a real contact with real science. What scares me now in the way that the science is organized is that the pressure on people having responsibility is so high that most of the time they leave completely any contact. They think that they are always scientists because they think great idea. What is important for me is not so much to have great idea and to give great idea to young scientists, but to have a true feeling of what is really an experiment, what is really science. And if you are no more doing science, it's extremely difficult to keep a contact with it.
Which is the experiments you're most proud of?
I think, honestly, all the time I work on the oxygen, I start very early during my thesis to show that several photons was necessary to get oxygen molecule, which gives the idea that photosynthesis was an organized system and not soluble. That was not soluble enzyme, but a structured system. And I think this was a period I progressed regularly, and even if I don't present the exact correct theory, nevertheless, the basic idea from the beginning was this necessity to add several photons in the same place and not to have molecule with diffuse, radical molecule, for example, with diffuse in the medium. This was really, I have also contribution in fluorescence, I think, in the same idea. And now, in the last part of my scientific life, I am convinced that what is really interesting in the basic problem of photosynthesis, the hard problem, the hurt problem in the molecule, in terms of concepts, for me, is more or less solved. And what for me is important is organization of complex system and regulation, which is a much more subtle problem, and this needs a completely different way of thinking, because nothing is clear-cut. All the beauty of biology is that it's not order, but it's not disorder. It's something in between order and disorder. It's easy to work on ordered system. We have very good method to work on random system, But to work in the between is extremely difficult, and this for me is biology. Most of people think in terms of structure toward function reasoning, you know. And my approach is to start from the function and to try to come back to the structure, because there is no good way to have direct structural information on the supramolecular organization of life.
One thing which also is very striking in your research is that you always have, and most of the time, you have been working on in vivo, right? In which, in the sense that, well, there you're sure that the complex are intact and you don't have, potential artifacts of extraction.
This is a very important.
And
yes.
I think one of your major contribution has also been to develop the tools, non-invasive tools to actually monitor how these complexes function. I mean, in terms of kinetics, high resolution, temporal kinetics, and I think this has also been a major contribution to the field.
It's true that the basic interest of practically all techniques I have developed is that they can be used not on purified system, but first it was used on chloroplast, which already something very complex, then used on in vivo system. Now I work all the time on leaves, entire leaves, and I think that even when you are interested in the property of a single complex, to have this complex in true physiological environment is something essential. And I see many mistakes that has been made because people want always to work on purified systems which are in a very different environment than the biological environment. But in any case, this is true even when you are interested in the individual complex working in photosynthesis. But if you are interested in regulation or in the general organization of the chloroplast and the interaction between of the chloroplast with the other compartment of the cells, it's obvious in this case you have no choice. You have to work in vivo. But as you said, it's probably for this type of studies that you need the more sophisticated techniques to have access. Non-invasive technique will give you access to in vivo system.
Yeah. No, the one thing which also strikes me is that, I mean, you still publish, I would say, almost regularly in journals like PNAS, and in most of the journals, it's just you and one collaborator. So in contrast to when you look at most papers today, you have always teams of 5, 10, or more people, but you manage just by yourself to still make major contribution in the field, and I think this is rather remarkable. I mean,
my pleasure is to do myself the experiment. If I can find something interesting, I hope that I will do it up to the time that I have to leave the lab.
Now, during these last 60 years, you have lived through this.
Last 60 years.
You have lived through this incredible biological revolution, right? I mean, it's amazing how the technology, how biology has evolved. How did you live this? I mean,
I would say that really, what is specific of my age, I start research in 1953. And very curiously, the break is roughly at the time I leave science for my military service, which is in 1959. To take an example, between all my thesis, even the word of membrane was not used in photosynthesis. Nobody knew what was a membrane. When I come back in 1961, it could be in terms of genetic protein synthesis, photosynthesis. It's in 3 or 4 years that I find, when I come back from my military, a completely different world.
So that was in the late 50s when the
Yeah,
structured
for
DNA
me,
came
for
out
me,
and,
for me, the break in practically most of the field around interest me was 55, 65. After, there is a lot of discovery, but for me, take for the photosynthesis, Mitchell theory was proposed in the 60s, you know. Yes. And when I leave my lab in 59, just any of the concepts used in the chemiosmotic theory, there is nothing. For me, I have the idea that it was probably a structured system, but the idea to organize all this complex in a membrane was completely out of my mind. The only membrane people speak was the membrane outside the cell. My boss, René Wurmser, had the idea very early that inside the chloroplast, lipid could correspond to barrier, electrostatic barrier to movement of charged particle and play a role in compartmentation of the cell. He wrote very interesting thing in the year 20 on this subject, but there is no real support.
How do you see the future of photosynthesis, the field of photosynthesis?
My feeling is that photosynthesis is not basically different of a lot of complex biological machinery, you know, but something which is exceptional in photosynthesis, which does not exist anywhere, is that we have to weigh a way just in vivo to perturb the system instantaneously in a non-invasive way by light. In other terms, for me, the interest of photoreaction now is not so much the basis of the interest of the photoreaction by itself, but it's a marvelous way to perturb a biological system in vivo, a complex biological system, in a very clean way and perfectly controlled. In other terms, I think if we compare, for instance, photosynthesis and photosynthetic apparatus and mitochondria, I think both are very similar. But in photosynthesis, we have some possibility of action, some probe also, that does not exist in mitochondria. Both problems are very important, but for me, photosynthesis is a complex biological system in which nature offers to new internal technique that allow us to manipulate in a simple way that many other biological systems. In other terms, I think, as I have said at the beginning, that there is an infinite number of good subjects in biology, but I think that photosynthesis for this region has a real avenir, how you said, future, yeah. Because we are lucky due to this internal machinery that we can manipulate easily.
Yeah. And I think something which has always fascinated me in photosynthesis is that you can really reach in very different time domains. You can go from the picosecond to the microsecond to the
exactly
second. And actually to make the link between these time domains is not at all trivial and fascinating at the same time.
In a certain way, you make a summary of my career, because all my technical effort in spectroscopy was to have access to a range of time which cover from nanosecond to hours, you know. And more I become old, more interested I am interested in slow. You know, all the beginning of my career, I concentrated on the short window.
Yes.
And now I shift more and more to slower and slower yes. window, you know.
Yes, yes.
But as you said, I think what is absolutely specific of photosynthesis is the range of time in which you can get interesting things from picosecond to, I would say, few minutes, which is at constant with no basic change in the composition of the machinery. And if now you are interested in genetics, in molecular biology, you have another scale of regulation, this time in a much longer range of time.
Well, I think we have covered a lot of grounds today. I wish to thank you again, Pierre Joliot, for this wonderful
Thank you.
talk with you. And,
Thank you,
with that,
Jean-David, to have supported me and my English during such a
it was my
time.
pleasure.